After a week, the 5th chapter of House of the Dragon is finally here. But before we get to the events in the capital, we'll pay a visit to the soldiers under Rhaenyra's command, who are trying to move as fast as possible toward Tumbleton. However, the bridges have been destroyed, slowing their advance, and all of this is Cole's doing. The old wolf knows that Criston Cole is trying to ruin his advance, and asks the young Tully to let him take his men and search the whole forest for him, to bring back his head on a platter so he stops being a problem. However, Tully has another idea. He sends 100 riders to secure the nearest boat so their advance won't be compromised, and tells the old man to sit, since they'll discuss the strategy they'll use against Cole and his dishonorable army. But what they don't expect at all is that Cole and his men are already present at the camp and have started slitting the guards' throats, taking advantage of the silence and the cover of night. The first to lose his life is the captain who was supposed to secure the boat. Cole appears stealthily behind him and slices his throat with a dagger. Then they burn his tent and begin advancing slowly, without making noise or drawing attention. In the paper he snatches from the dead man, Cole realizes that Tully's order is to travel toward the boat, so they plan to get there first, as soon as possible, to keep ruining their plans, and to support the army in Tumbleton with their dishonorable strategies. Not far from there, at the burned castle of Harrenhal, 3 mercenaries enter, looking for Aemond. After Rhaenyra promised the castle to whoever brought her his head, the witch Alice has received many visits from men seeking the reward, but she assures them they won't find what they're looking for in this place. There is only soot and death. Before entering a castle they don't belong in, they should have read its history. These walls have been bathed in blood and are always thirsty. Right after, Alice picks up a rock and throws it into a corner, making thousands upon thousands of bats fly everywhere, scaring the mercenaries half to death, who truly start to believe the place is haunted. But before they can do anything to her, she makes sure to disappear so she can keep watching them and make sure they leave. The men's screams of fear can be heard throughout the castle. That includes Aemond, who is in a closed room, resting and recovering from the wound he was given in the back. He wakes up completely terrified, repeating over and over that his brother's face was on fire and trying to drag him into the darkness. She has been taking care of him, bandaging his wound and treating him with a lot of affection, to the point that Aemond hugs her tightly and a few seconds later says the word mother, as if a real bond had formed. Back in King's Landing, things are taking their course. The rats are no longer seen in the halls, but there are a great number of cats that have been brought in from other towns to help bring down the plague. At that moment, we see Maester Orwyle walking toward the old queen's chambers, making up an excuse to the guard that this is a matter of a feminine nature, so he'll be allowed to enter. Alicent is very grateful for his help, and in fact tries to ask him for another favor, but Orwyle reveals that Mysaria is quite insistent and sharp, so from today on, he won't be able to keep helping her, not without having to report it, or his head could be at risk. In the cup, there's a brew to end Helena's pregnancy, since her child could be very troublesome for Rhaenyra, and most likely she would try to kill it as soon as it's born, since it won't put her claim to the throne up for debate. But Helaena refuses to accept it. She's not willing to sacrifice her baby, and she confesses that she knows Aemond is still alive. She has seen him in her dreams. He is burning, but not in fire. It's a clear sign that he's recovering and will return soon, and everything will go back to normal. Even though Alicent begs her to do it, Helaena shouts in her face that it's hers and that she won't end its life, no matter what she tries, and attempts to tip over the cup. In the council chamber, the queen learns that 2 gold-cloaked guards were found dead this morning, their throats slit and stabbed in a horrible way, in a part of the capital called Flea Bottom, which is full of undesirables who do as they please. But Daemon is not willing to tolerate this, and asks to be allowed to use the gold cloaks to purge that area, but they have more important matters to deal with, such as the fact that Vhagar was seen flying and attacking a couple of villages to eat the sheep. The bad news about this is that none of the dragon seeds could follow it long enough to find out where it was headed, and they lost the chance to locate or find out if Aemond is still alive. But since the dragon seeds are extremely worn out, Rhaenyra chooses to send Daemon, who refuses to obey her this time, since he must fulfill his oath to the gold cloaks and protect them from this threat. Being the queen and having your husband defy you in front of the council doesn't look very good, and once they're alone, she asks him why he's doing all this. if they've always known that the priority is to find Aemond and make him pay for what he's done. But her husband reminds her that the only thing motivating him to give those orders is revenge, and there's no honor in killing a fox that's hiding. Aemond is scared, and his matter can wait, since right at this moment, a revolution could be brewing in her city, and if she doesn't keep control in the capital, she'll have even less in the Seven Kingdoms. Daemon reminds her that she is the queen of dragons. Her legitimacy lies in her strength, not in the insults people might write on the walls. The cruelty she showed before is what caused all of this. You can't go around cutting off hands and tongues just because someone insults you. That's not how you rule. Meanwhile, in the middle of the forest, we see Aegon walking away from the camp while Larys tries to tell him that's not a good idea. None of them are in any condition to continue the journey, especially after what they went through before. Larys reminds him that they're 100 leagues from Harrenhal, and the whole route is full of Riverlands men. So basically, with every step he takes, he risks being captured, which would endanger the whole plan they've been developing. Back in the capital, Mysaria finds out what happened between Alicent and the Maester, and has come to make sure the problem is hers to deal with, and not her daughter's womb, since that could endanger both their lives. To make sure Mysaria doesn't suspect anything about Helena's pregnancy, Alicent ends up drinking that brew, risking her life to whatever it could cause her. Alicent begs Mysaria not to say anything about this, since it was only a slip-up with someone who doesn't belong to the crown. So, believing she has fooled her, Mysaria leaves, truly thinking that she is the one who was pregnant and not her daughter. But a few hours later, we can see Alicent with pale skin and cold sweat, being a victim of the medicine, which has caused her a strong pain in her belly. Also, she has realized that Mysaria has just replaced her housekeeper, and surely she will report everything that happens here from now on. Back with the Greens, Gwaine talks to Criston Cole about life in the Hightower lands and tries to convince him to long for a place there and to kneel before his cousin, who will surely grant him land and a lovely wife so he can die of old age and not by the sword. Unfortunately, this could not interest Cole less, since the only thing he longs for right now is a good death. He's wanted this for a long time. That's why he didn't seek Aemon's help before and decided to carry on this battle, even though they are greatly outnumbered. Suddenly, one of the riders has an accident, and when they come closer to check, they realize his horse has stepped on some kind of sharp trap that pierces through its leg, and it has now become a useless animal. A few seconds later, other horses go through the same thing, including Criston Cole's, who escaped, leaving him lying on the ground. This is where the soldiers realize that the whole terrain around them is full of these things, and in just a few seconds, they've lost many horses. Cole goes over to his loyal companion, draws his sword, and puts him down to spare him the suffering and pain, which means it will now be a battle on foot. Another one who has decided to walk through the misery is Daemon himself, who is determined to uncover the truth about what's happening with the gold cloaks. As they walk through the alleys, they hear the villagers shout, "Murderer!" So they run to deal with the matter. But what they end up finding is a new level of cruelty, since two of their best men are lying on the ground, with their throats slit and their guts spilled out of their bodies. Right at that moment, we see those responsible for all of this, when a pigeon flies out of a window straight toward Tumbleton and is received by Aemond, who is financing this whole internal war and paying with Hightower gold for every gold cloak guard they kill. Hearing that others are dying gives him some satisfaction, but he's even more pleased to hear that Daeron is finally learning the stories from the Hightowers, since it's his mission to turn him into one of them so he can sit on the Iron Throne and rule, not by his blood, but by the name he was raised with. Aemond asks him if he has studied Maria Martell, the only woman granted a military mind. They used to call her the Yellow Toad of Dorne, since the gods deprived her of beauty. She was the first to call Aegon the usurper and tell him that the lands of Dorne would remain unbroken and would not submit to him or to those who came after him. After she said this, a great army came down through the mountains, including Hightower soldiers, unfortunately. But what they ended up finding is a completely empty castle, and the water wells had been poisoned. Everyone believed that Maria had fled out of fear and that she was defeated. But that night, her men rose up from the desert sand and massacred every one of the soldiers in their beds, proving the strength and intelligence of Dorne, which to this day still hasn't been conquered. Back in King's Landing, Alicent knows that soon her daughter's pregnancy will start to show, and she needs to find a way to escape that place, since she refuses to end it. So she tells her that she spent everything they had on a servant who will help them escape, getting them a couple of uniforms, but they can't take Rhaenyra with them. However, Helaena is not willing to do that. First, she asks her to get rid of the baby in her womb, and now she's asking for something much worse. So Alicent will have to come up with some other plan. If she wants to get them out of there, it will have to be together. Meanwhile, Alan and Baela are following Vagar's tracks, but he remembers they've been at this for days, and she hasn't eaten or slept, so he suggests they stop. However, Baela refuses, and confesses that the queen won't even look her in the eye after her son died, and she can't help but think she's blaming her for it. She can't believe that just a few weeks ago, she was meant to be the future queen, and to marry the boy she loved. But then all of that ended with Jace's death. As for Aemond, his wound is healing, but his mind couldn't be more on edge, since at times he seems to recognize Alice, and at other times he doesn't. The next morning, the mercenaries return with someone else and try to force Alice to give up Aemond's location when he appears and attacks them with his sword, managing to kill them one by one until he finally finishes them all off. But his wound reopens and he falls to the ground, which will delay his return to the capital even further. At that moment, we're shown his brother, Aegon, who as always is complaining about the cards he's been dealt, until Larys gets fed up with all this and tells him some hard truths to his face. He was a terrible king, considering he had every advantage in the world. The best knights to teach him swordsmanship, a dragon that took the name of the sun itself, and all he did was squander it, drinking and wallowing in mediocrity. And that doesn't just make him a terrible king, but also a terrible man. Although those words would have easily cost Larys his head in the past, at this moment, they hit Aegon with a lot of truth, making him reflect on everything he's been doing, and he can't help but admit Larys is right. Someone else who is also having a change of heart is Gwaine, who after losing all his horses, tries to make Cole see that continuing toward death is not the right path. The rumor that some men want to desert is spreading quickly, and it's not that they doubt his leadership, but that they don't want to die like he does. The whole road is covered in thorns and brambles, making the advance harder, and every step extremely difficult, especially since they haven't eaten or rested. Back with Larys, Aegon surprises him by showing up once more and accepting his terms to continue the journey. It seems his words have had some effect, and not only that, they end up running into, like a ghost, none other than Tyland Lannister himself, who survived the Battle of the Gullet after being thrown off the ship to lighten its load. But before we get to see this conversation, Alicent's plan has been set in motion, and both of them have dressed as servants to reach the tunnel that will get her out of there. But there's a problem. Alicent told her daughter that the servant would bring the baby, and that still hasn't happened. But the worst part of all this is that Mysaria is right outside waiting for them to reveal that their plan had many flaws and that she can pay far better than a prisoner can. Alicent has no choice but to confess to her that Helaena is the one carrying a baby that could be very troublesome. Mysaria is determined to tell the queen this, but Alicent reminds her that she once heard stories about the White Worm and asks her to think of herself for once. The crown weighs enough to crush people's convictions, and Rhaenyra will be forced to do something she doesn't want to do. Something extreme. And when that moment comes, it would serve Mysaria well for Alicent to owe her a great favor, since she is still a Hightower. She's not asking her to betray her kingdom, only to keep a small secret until the right moment. That is exactly what the White Worm would do. Mysaria leaves with a lot to think about, but she can't deny that Alicent has a point. The queen already values her quite a bit, and it wouldn't hurt for the Hightowers to owe her a big favor, one she could call in whenever things don't go as planned. Meanwhile, Criston Cole's men keep suffering hardships and come across something that finally pushes them over the edge. They arrived too late at the boat, and the Riverlands men have already crossed and destroyed the bridges, cutting off their path. Shortly after, Gwaine talks to him and tells him that maybe this was the best thing that could have happened, and says goodbye to travel toward Tumbleton and join his cousin. Back with Larys, he tries to convince Tyland to support him on his journey, but Tyland tells him he still has a few trustworthy men left, and the only thing they need to do is get Aegon to Lannisport. There, they'll be able to gather more forces. A few seconds later, we see the camp leader, the person who humiliated Aegon in a truly cruel way in the previous episode, sneak up and go through his belongings, finding his crown and trying to use it as bait. But Aegon throws himself on him and stabs him again and again with the dragon scale, holding his mouth shut so he can't scream, and kills him while revealing his true identity. In Rhaenyra's chamber, her husband finally returns with the key to the whole revolution, a coin bearing Daeron's face, forged with Hightower gold, who have declared him the rightful king. Now they know they have the same enemy inside and outside the city, and it's time to eliminate it once and for all. So Daemon returns to the Gold Cloak's den to inform them of his plan, but what he ends up finding is something much worse. The rest of his men have been massacred and laid out on a table, as if they were feasting on their own guts. It's a horrific, dreadful scene that reminds him the revolution isn't starting. It's already here, and it's not a few traitors he's up against, but enough of them to wipe out his most loyal men without him even noticing. The chapter ends showing us Alicent and her daughter finding a secret passage in her room, but the end of the hallway is blocked, and both of them are trapped in a place with no way out, since the door behind them has closed. Without a doubt, this was an episode full of tension, betrayals, and unexpected twists that leave everyone eager to see what happens in the next episode.